Anna Miller, homeless and struggling on the streets of New York, meets Ethan Kane, a wealthy businessman who asks her to accompany him to his ex-fiancée's high society wedding. Unlike others who simply offer charity, Ethan wants someone genuine by his side. Skeptical but intrigued, Anna agrees and faces judgment from his elite circle, especially his ex Lauren. Despite the criticism, Ethan defends Anna, and a deep connection forms between them, transcending wealth and appearances. As they left the glitzy event behind, Anna realized that Ethan wasn't interested in impressing anyone with wealth or status anymore. He wanted something real, something meaningful, and so did she. They were both ready to leave behind the hollow expectations of the elite and embark on a journey that was truly their own. The weeks that followed the wedding were like something out of a dream for Anna. Gone were the cold, hard streets of New York. Now she was waking up in Ethan's spacious penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city's skyline. It still felt surreal, like at any moment she'd blink and find herself back on the stoop, huddled against the biting wind. At first, Anna had been hesitant to stay in Ethan's world, but he had been persistent. "You can stay here as long as you need," he had said, and after a long internal battle, she accepted. The guilt of accepting help weighed on her, but she justified it to herself as temporary, just until she got back on her feet. However, she wasn't prepared for the way her life was about to change. Ethan had gone beyond offering her a place to stay. He helped her get new clothes, provided contacts to update her resume, and even connected her with a job in a high-end boutique downtown. She could see he wasn't trying to control her or mold her into something else. He simply wanted her to succeed. Still, as Anna settled into this new rhythm, she felt an underlying tension. The wedding had been an eye-opener, a harsh reminder that even though Ethan accepted her, the rest of his world wasn't so accommodating. People stared. They whispered. She felt their judgment in every glance, in every fleeting smile that didn't quite reach their eyes. The sense of being an outsider clung to her like a shadow. As Anna adjusted to this new phase of her life, she and Ethan grew closer. He was kind, considerate, and, despite his wealth, never flaunted his status in a way that made her feel inferior. They spent evenings together talking, watching old movies, or sharing takeout on his pristine designer couch. He often asked about her past, not prying but genuinely curious. Anna, too, learned more about Ethan, his struggles growing up, how hard he had worked to break into the world of wealth and privilege, and how he had felt trapped by it ever since. There were moments, brief flashes, where Anna felt like she was living in some fairy tale, with Ethan playing the role of her prince. But as the weeks rolled by, she realized the happily ever after wasn't as simple as she had once thought. The first signs of trouble came from Ethan's circle of friends. Though Ethan had tried to shield her from the more vicious gossip, Anna was sharp enough to pick up on the judgment. When they went to charity events, high-end dinners, or gallery openings, the tension was palpable. One evening, they attended a lavish charity gala at one of the most exclusive venues in the city. Anna had dressed carefully for the event, wearing a simple yet elegant gown Ethan had gifted her. She felt nervous but determined to hold her own. As they made their way through the glittering ballroom, everything seemed perfect. Until they ran into Harrison Whitmore, one of Ethan's closest friends from his boarding school days. Harrison was tall with the kind of aristocratic charm that drew attention wherever he went. He flashed Anna a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Well, well," Harrison said, clasping Ethan on the back. "You've really gone off the beaten path this time, haven't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he smiled anyway. "Good to see you, Harrison." "And who is this lovely lady?" Harrison turned his full attention to Anna. His gaze was too probing, too sharp, as though he could see right through her. "This is Anna," Ethan said, placing a protective hand on her lower back. "We met a few months ago." Harrison arched an eyebrow. "Anna. Miller, was it? I think I've heard about you." His tone was smooth, but it was laced with venom. Quite the rags to riches story, isn't it? I suppose that's the beauty of New York. One minute you're nobody, and the next you're someone important. He smiled, but it was cold. Anna's stomach twisted. She could feel the judgment behind Harrison's words. Ethan tried to move the conversation along, but the damage was done. Everywhere she went that evening, she felt the eyes of the wealthy elite on her, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Why her? When they finally left the gala, Anna couldn't hold it in anymore. "What was that all about?" she asked as they got into Ethan's car. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Harrison's just a jerk. Don't let him get to you." "Don't let him get to me?" Anna's voice rose, her frustration spilling out. "Ethan, they all look at me like I don't belong, like I'm some outsider who's using you." Ethan looked at her, his expression softening. "You're not using me, Anna. I don't care what they think." "But I do," she snapped, her voice trembling. "I feel it every time we go out. They don't see me as your equal, Ethan. They see me as some charity case you picked up off the street." Ethan's face hardened. "You're more than that, Anna. You're not some project to me." "I know that," she whispered, tears prickling the back of her eyes. "But I don't know if I can keep living in a world where I'm constantly reminded that I don't fit in." "Maybe we need to give it time," Ethan finally said, his voice strained. "People will get used to us. They'll see what I see in you." Anna wanted to believe him, but deep down the seed of doubt had already been planted. In the following weeks, the tension between Anna and Ethan simmered just below the surface. Their relationship, once filled with easy laughter and quiet moments of connection, now felt fraught with unspoken worries. Ethan's world, with its glamorous facade, was starting to suffocate Anna. And then came the scandal. It started as a whisper in the tabloids, a story about Kane Investments, the firm that Ethan had built from the ground up. Rumors swirled about insider trading, financial misconduct, and a pending investigation by the SEC. Ethan dismissed it at first, but soon enough, the whispers turned into front-page news. The media circled like vultures, digging into every aspect of Ethan's life, including his relationship with Anna. One evening, Ethan came home late, his face drawn and pale. Anna had been waiting for him, anxiety gnawing at her. "What's going on?" she asked the moment he walked through the door. Ethan rubbed his face, looking more exhausted than she had ever seen him. "It's bad, Anna. The SEC is opening a formal investigation. They think someone inside the company's been leaking information for personal gain." "Is it true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," Ethan said quickly, but then hesitated. "At least, I don't think so. I've been out of the day-to-day for months. It could be someone else in management, but I'm getting blamed because I'm the CEO." Anna sat down, her mind racing. She had no idea what to say, how to comfort him. "What's going to happen?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "If they find anything, I could lose everything." Anna's heart sank. She hadn't realized how much this world, as difficult as it had been for her to navigate, had become part of her life. And now, it was all at risk of falling apart. In the days that followed, the media frenzy only grew worse. Photos of Ethan and Anna leaving events were splashed across gossip columns, with headlines questioning her role in the scandal. From streets to scandal, Ethan Kane's new girlfriend under scrutiny, one article read. Another questioned whether Anna was part of the reason for Ethan's downfall, spinning a narrative that she was a distraction that had led him astray. The accusations cut deep, and Anna felt the weight of them more heavily than she had anticipated. Everywhere she went, she saw her face plastered across tabloids. Strangers on the street whispered as she passed, and even at her new job, people looked at her with thinly veiled suspicion. One night, unable to sleep, Anna found herself pacing the living room, her thoughts a storm of doubt and fear. Could she survive this? Could their relationship? The door to the penthouse opened and Ethan walked in, looking like he had aged 10 years in a single day. He dropped his briefcase by the door and collapsed onto the couch. "I can't do this anymore," Anna blurted out, her voice cracking. Ethan looked up, startled. "I can't live in a world where I'm constantly judged and blamed for things I have nothing to do with. It's too much." Ethan stood up, crossing the room to stand in front of her. "Anna, I don't care what the world thinks. We can get through this." "But at what cost?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "You're losing everything, and I feel like I'm part of the reason why." "You're not," Ethan said firmly, taking her hands in his. "This is happening because of the business, not because of us." Anna pulled her hands away, stepping back. "But it's not just the business, it's the media, your friends. Everyone's looking at me like I'm the reason your life is falling apart." Ethan's face twisted with frustration. "So what? You're just going to leave after everything we've been through?" Anna bit her lip, her heart breaking. "I don't know what else to do." That night, they sat in silence, the tension between them unbearable. Both knew that the relationship was at a breaking point, but neither had the courage to make the final move. The love they shared was real, but the external pressures had become too much to ignore. The next morning, Ethan received a phone call. The SEC had uncovered new evidence that directly implicated him in the insider trading scheme. He was to be arrested and charged. As Ethan was taken away in handcuffs, Anna stood frozen at the door, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run to him, to tell him everything would be okay, but the walls were closing in. The world that had once seemed so glamorous and full of promise was crumbling before her eyes. And as the door closed behind him, she was left standing alone, unsure of what to do next, unsure if their love could survive what was to come. Ethan's arrest shattered the fragile world they had built. Anna sat on the edge of their bed, staring blankly at the news on the television. Every channel was covering the scandal. CEO Ethan Kane, arrested in insider trading scandal. The image of Ethan in handcuffs being led away by law enforcement was seared into her mind. She could still feel the cold emptiness of their penthouse, once warm and full of promise, now a constant reminder of the life slipping through their fingers. It wasn't long before the financial fallout began. Ethan's accounts were frozen almost immediately. All the assets tied to his business were under investigation, leaving him with little access to his once vast wealth. Lawyers worked to negotiate bail, but with no access to his funds, Ethan found himself in an unfamiliar position, vulnerable. "Don't worry, I'll figure it out," Ethan had reassured her in those first few days, still trying to maintain some sense of control. But when the lawyers finally arranged for his release on bail, the truth became clear. Ethan didn't have enough liquid assets left to cover the cost. The luxurious penthouse, the cars, the investments, everything was either seized or frozen. Anna couldn't stand by and watch him sink. In that moment, she knew she had to step up. She took her savings, the little she had managed to build up from her new job, and liquidated everything. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover part of his bail. Ethan, unwilling to let her bear this burden alone, used what remained of his dwindling liquid funds to make up the rest. It was a hard hit, but at least it bought them time. After Ethan's release, they knew their lives were about to change drastically. "Anna," Ethan said one night, his voice hollow as they sat together in the now quiet penthouse, "I can't let you keep doing this. You've already given me everything you have. I don't want to pull you down with me." But Anna wouldn't hear it. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has. I'm not walking away from this, Ethan. We'll figure it out together." Their first step was downsizing. The penthouse was too costly, and neither of them could afford the upkeep any longer. They found a small, modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, a world away from the luxury they had known. It was cramped with barely enough space for the two of them, but it was their new reality. Despite everything, Anna was determined to make it work. To support them both, Anna took on a second job. During the day, she continued working at the boutique, but at night, she picked up shifts as a waitress at a local diner. The hours were grueling, and exhaustion became her constant companion, but she didn't complain. Ethan, once a titan in the business world, was now spending his days meeting with lawyers and preparing for court. His confidence had waned, and she could see the toll it was taking on him. "I should be the one taking care of you," he told her one night, frustration heavy in his voice as he watched her collapse into bed after a double shift. "You took care of me when I had nothing," she whispered back, squeezing his hand. "Now it's my turn." Ethan's court dates came fast and furious, each one another blow to his spirit. Anna was there for every single one, sitting in the gallery, her heart aching as she watched the man she loved being cross-examined and scrutinized by a system that had once praised him as a financial genius. His high-profile lawyers fought tirelessly, but the odds were stacked against them. Ethan's reputation was in tatters, and even those closest to him, his friends, his business partners, began to distance themselves. Harrison Whitmore, once one of Ethan's closest confidants, was the first to disappear. He stopped answering calls and no longer showed up to court. Soon, the rest of Ethan's so-called friends followed suit. The people who had once filled their social calendar with glamorous events now pretended as though Ethan didn't exist. But Anna stayed. She would sit with him in their small apartment, going over the case files, offering him words of encouragement, doing whatever she could to keep his spirits up. Their late-night conversations shifted from the stress of the trial to moments of reflection where Ethan would open up about his past, his fears, and his regrets. And in those moments, Anna felt their bond deepen in ways she hadn't expected. Then came the inevitable. Despite their best efforts, the court handed down its ruling. Ethan was sentenced to 1 year in federal prison. The sentencing hit like a freight train. Ethan was quiet for days, the weight of the outcome pressing down on him. He tried to push her away, insisting that Anna didn't deserve to be dragged into this life any longer. "I don't want you wasting your time waiting for me, Anna," he said one evening, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm going to jail. You deserve better." Anna looked at him, her heart breaking at the sight of his despair. "I told you I wasn't leaving," she said softly. "I'll be here when you get out. I promise." The next day, when Ethan was taken into custody, Anna stood by his side, holding his hand until the very last moment. The year that followed was the hardest of Anna's life. Ethan was gone, and the weight of the world seemed to fall squarely on her shoulders. She continued working 2 jobs, struggling to make ends meet while paying for Ethan's legal fees and keeping their small apartment. Every weekend, without fail, Anna visited Ethan in prison. She sat with him in the sterile visiting room, holding his hands and talking for hours. At first, their conversations were filled with the pain of their separation, but slowly, they began to find a new rhythm. They talked about everything: books, memories, their future. Each visit became a lifeline for both of them, a reminder that no matter how bleak things seemed, they still had each other. And as the months passed, their love grew stronger. The trials and tribulations they had faced only deepened their bond. It wasn't about wealth or status anymore. It was about loyalty, trust, and the unwavering support they gave each other. Anna became Ethan's world, and Ethan became hers. Even as the outside world turned its back on him, she stood by his side, a constant source of strength. Yet, as the days inched closer to his release, Ethan became more introspective. He talked more about his old life, the pressures, the people who had once surrounded him, and how empty it had all felt. Anna noticed a change in him, a quiet shift. It was as though the walls he had built up over the years were slowly coming down. Finally, the day came. After serving his sentence, Ethan was released. Anna was there to pick him up, her heart racing as she saw him step out of the prison gates, free at last. They embraced, holding on to each other like they had survived a war. But something was different. Ethan had a calmness about him that hadn't been there before. He had been stripped of his wealth, his reputation tarnished, but there was a new clarity in his eyes, a sense of purpose that Anna hadn't seen before. That night, back in their small apartment, Ethan revealed the truth. "Anna, there's something I need to tell you," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Everything that happened, the arrest, the scandal, the trial, it wasn't real. It was all a setup." Anna blinked, confusion flooding her. "What do you mean, a setup?" Ethan took a deep breath, taking her hands in his. "I orchestrated it. The scandal, the charges, even the trial. It was all fake. I wanted to see who would stand by me when everything fell apart, who was real in my life and who was only there for the money and the status." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. "But you went to jail for a whole year." "I had to," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I needed to know what mattered in my life. I wanted to find out who would stay when everything was stripped away, and you were the only one who never wavered. You stood by me when I had nothing." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes as the full weight of his words sank in. "You tested me?" "I didn't just test you," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. "I tested everyone, my friends, my business partners. I had to know who would be there when I had nothing, and you, Anna, you were the only one who passed." Anna pulled her hands from his, stepping back as tears streamed down her face. She didn't know whether to feel hurt, angry, or grateful. "So all of this was just some kind of experiment?" "No," Ethan said quickly, moving toward her. "It wasn't about you. It was about me. I had lost sight of what really mattered. I needed to know if I was surrounding myself with the right people. And you, Anna, you are the best thing that's ever happened to me." Anna stood there, tears falling silently, her heart a mess of emotions. For so long she had believed she was fighting to save him from a world that had turned its back on him. And now she realized that in the end, it was Ethan who had been testing her loyalty all along. "I'm sorry," Ethan whispered, reaching out to wipe the tears from her cheeks. "I know I hurt you, but I had to know. I had to know who was real." Anna stared at him for a long moment, her heart still raw with emotion. She didn't know what to say. She felt betrayed, but at the same time, she understood why he had done it. "I don't know if I can forgive you for that," she finally said, her voice shaky. "But I love you, Ethan. And that's the only thing I'm sure of right now." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I love you too, Anna. And I swear, from this day forward, I will never doubt you again." As they stood together in the dim light of their modest apartment, wrapped in each other's arms, the truth of what Ethan had done hung heavy between them. Anna's heart was still raw, torn between anger and understanding. The betrayal stung, but beneath it all, she could see the man who had risked everything to find what truly mattered. Ethan loosened his embrace, taking a step back so he could look into her eyes. His voice was quiet, filled with sincerity. "Anna, I didn't just test the people in my life. I tested myself. I needed to know if I was capable of building something real, something true. I'd spent so many years surrounded by people who cared only about what I could offer them. I had no idea what real loyalty looked like until I met you." Anna wiped the remaining tears from her cheeks, her emotions still tangled. But why go to such lengths? Why put yourself, and me, through all of this? Ethan exhaled slowly, his expression weary but determined. "Because I knew that the kind of life I had been living wasn't sustainable. I wanted to start over, but I couldn't do that with the wrong people around me. I had to strip everything away, my wealth, my power, so that I could see who would stay by my side when I had nothing." His eyes softened, and he took her hands again, his grip firm and steady. "I needed to know if I could find someone who would love me for who I truly am, not for what I can offer. And Anna, you showed me that kind of love. You stepped up when I was at my lowest, even when everyone else abandoned me. You worked 2 jobs, you stood by me through every court appearance, and you visited me every weekend when I was in prison. That's a kind of loyalty and love that I've never known before." Anna stared at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had been angry at him moments ago, hurt by the deception, but as Ethan's words sank in, she realized that this journey had been about more than just survival. It had been a test of their bond, a trial by fire that had ultimately made them stronger. "I did it all because I love you, Ethan," she whispered. "Not for your money or your status, but for you." Ethan smiled, his eyes shimmering with gratitude. "And I've spent the last year learning what that love really means. A year of searching for the right one, of stripping away the illusions of my old life, has prepared me for what really matters. A lifetime with someone who will stand by me, no matter what." Anna felt a fresh wave of tears well up, but this time they were tears of relief and understanding. Ethan hadn't just tested her loyalty, he had been preparing himself for a future where their love would be the foundation of everything. Their bond had been forged through hardship, and now it was unbreakable. "I know I hurt you by keeping this from you," Ethan continued, his voice trembling slightly. "But I needed to be sure that when I found the right person, I would be worthy of them. And Anna, you're the one. You're the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. I've never been more sure of anything." Anna felt the weight of his words, the enormity of what he was saying. This wasn't just an apology, it was a promise that their love, tested in the hardest of times, would endure. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he held her, as if he would never let her go. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she smiled through it, her voice barely a whisper. "I love you, Ethan, and I'm ready for that lifetime too." Ethan's smile grew, a mixture of relief and joy washing over his face. He gently pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "This year was just the beginning. From now on, it's you and me, Anna. No more tests, no more doubts. Just us, building something real, something that no one can take away." Anna closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his words seep into her soul. She thought back to the dark days when she had nothing, when her life had been a struggle just to survive. Now she stood here, not in a palace or surrounded by wealth, but with something far more valuable, a love that had been tested, strengthened, and made unbreakable. And she knew deep down that this was the start of something truly extraordinary. Their love had survived the fire, and from it, they had forged a bond that would last a lifetime. The next year was unlike anything they had known. Free from the weight of status and societal expectations, Ethan and Anna began to build a life that was truly their own. Though their relationship had been forged in the fires of hardship, they now embraced a new chapter, one of healing, growth, and, most importantly, love. It started with a shocking turn of events. After months of being branded as a disgraced CEO, a bombshell news story broke. Billionaire risks everything to find true love. The media had finally uncovered the truth behind Ethan's so-called scandal. His name was cleared, and the revelation that the entire situation had been a test to find true loyalty sent shockwaves through the city's elite circles. The headlines spoke of Ethan's bold decision to strip away his wealth and power to see who would stand by him when everything else was gone. His assets were never truly frozen. They had been carefully hidden in blind trusts, waiting for the moment when he would step back into the light. When the truth came out, it didn't take long for his reputation to be restored. Those who had abandoned him during his trial were now scrambling to re-establish connections. But Ethan had no interest in returning to his former world of hollow relationships. He had found something far more valuable in the process, Anna and the life they had built together. With his name restored and his fortune intact, Ethan and Anna moved back into the luxurious penthouse they had once left behind. The sprawling view of the city from the floor-to-ceiling windows felt different now. It was no longer a symbol of status or success, but a reminder of how far they had come together. The space was the same, but the people living in it had changed. Ethan, leaving the ruthless world of high finance behind, started a small venture aimed at helping struggling entrepreneurs. The business was rooted in the same principles he had come to value: integrity, loyalty, and the importance of lifting others up. It was work that gave him purpose, but he approached it with a newfound balance, making sure it never consumed him the way his former life had. Meanwhile, Anna was finally able to pursue her passion. With the help of their savings and Ethan's unwavering support, she opened a boutique, a small but elegant shop nestled in a vibrant neighborhood. It wasn't about the glamour or the money. It was about creating something beautiful and meaningful, something that reflected her journey. They didn't need the trappings of wealth to feel fulfilled, but now that they had their fortune back, they were able to use it in ways that truly mattered. Their lives were no longer about showing off or keeping up appearances. What they had was something much more precious: each other. Gone were the whispers of doubt and judgment that had once haunted them. The friends who had vanished when Ethan's downfall seemed imminent were never allowed back into their lives. Instead, they surrounded themselves with a small, close-knit circle of people who valued them for who they were, not what they had. And every time they looked back on the year that had tested them, they knew it had been worth it. That year of hardship, of stripping everything down to its core, had prepared them for a lifetime of love, trust, and an unbreakable bond. It had shown them what truly mattered. And it wasn't the money or the power. It was the strength they found in each other. In the end, Ethan hadn't just been testing Anna's loyalty, he had been preparing them both for something far more enduring, a future built not on wealth or status, but on a love that could withstand any storm, a love that would last a lifetime.